Hi, my name is Savannah Serval, and I am here to talk about the Unabomber Manifesto, which is on page 53 of the textbook. It is the case study that I was assigned to cover this time. So a little bit of background about the case. From 1978 to 1955, 16 bomb attacks by the same person, which were targeting universities and airlines, killed 3 people and injured 23. Theodore Kaczynski, a 55-year-old man behind the attacks, threatened to set off a bomb at an undisclosed location, a bomb to kill, unless the Washington Post and the New York Times published what he wanted them to publish. The newspapers deliberated and talked to the FBI, and when they finally agreed to publish it, at the urging of the FBI, Kaczynski agreed to call off his bombings in exchange for the manifesto that he wanted published, and the manifesto was just a list of reasonings as to why he was bombing, kind of why he was justified in doing this. This move ultimately led to his demise when his brother recognized his writing style and turned him in to the police. Kaczynski was charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder, but the trial ended in a plea agreement in which the government agreed not to seek the death penalty because of Kaczynski's mental illness, which he was diagnosed with acute paranoid schizophrenia. So instead of the death penalty, they decided to have him serve 4 consecutive life sentences in prison. So representatives of the New York Times and the Washington Post worked together when deciding what to do about the issue. They were the 2 main parties involved. They consulted local law enforcement and the FBI, which is the 3rd biggest party involved, which is protocol. It's what most newsrooms do for when they receive messages from people threatening dire action unless specific requests are met. Now, usually newspapers don't print anything when they're threatened, but law enforcement agencies found that Kaczynski and his threat should be an exception. The Unabomber wanted to make a point through his manifesto that the industrial technological system is a disaster for the human race. So he wanted to instead promote social stress and instability, which, from what I can gather, includes bombing. That's a part of this. Kaczynski believed that revolution was necessary, and by revolution, he meant basically just demolishing the current system beyond repair. Now, several journalists objected to the Washington Post and the New York Times' decision to publish the manifesto, arguing that it dangerously erodes the line between media and the government, arguing that it also encourages other people to threaten large populations of people to have their demands met, and they kind of just saw that negotiating with a terrorist was counterproductive. So people who have this view will most likely believe that newspapers should not play any part in the work of police or law enforcement, but rather just play the role of reporting the news. So they thought that they should not have interfered because it is not their job to stop things from happening. It is just their job to report about things when they do happen. And the New York Times, they were the 2 publications that were being demanded to publish the manifesto. Basically, the Unabomber made them feel like it was their responsibility to stop him, or the deaths of these people would somehow, in a way, land on their shoulders. Other involved parties include the victims of the Unabomber. He is publishing this manifesto out for the families and friends and even the injured victims to read 8 pages about why it's okay for him to do this, about why it was justified, why it needed to happen. Also, it affected journalists, as we talked about above a little bit. Many of them called into question, like, what drives the publication of certain articles. They called into question, what is the role of the newspaper, and what job does the newsroom have, and where does that line between being a journalist but being able to really make a tangible difference lie. It also affected huge with his position, in which he had to balance his loyalty to his family with justice and fairness and obeying the law. Ultimately, I would say that obviously the Unabomber's brother turned him in. And so I would say that ultimately the brother here, you can apply Kant's ethical theory to this, because the brother followed his moral duty to be a rational human being in making the decision to turn his brother in. So it would have been understandable for him to not turn in his brother, and for him to maintain his loyalty to his brother by protecting him and keeping him safe. But rationally, that was not the best decision. He had information about an FBI's most wanted, arguably the most wanted man in the world at the time, and he had the opportunity to save who knows how many lives. We don't know where the bomb that the Unabomber wanted to set off was at the time, or where his future bombs would be. So he, I think, followed Kant's ethical theory. I mean, he probably wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to apply Kant's ethical theory, but we can see it applied in this case by following his moral duty, deciding how to act, rather than choosing loyalty, which is based on emotion, to hide his brother from the law enforcement, from the FBI. So, publishing the manifesto could, like the New York Times and the Washington Post decision to publish it, yes, it could encourage others to do the same thing, to make threats, to get what they want, to get published what they want published. But it also led to the Unabomber being captured. Now, there wasn't any way to know this was going to happen from the beginning. They just thought they were protecting people by doing this. But news outlets, they made a decision based on the facts that they had. They had the person making the threat. They knew that he had killed 3 people and injured 29 others, and they knew that he had already built and set off 16 bombs. So his threat wasn't theoretical, it was imminent. And as journalists, the newspapers have a responsibility. It's in just the code of ethics of journalism to minimize harm. And the harm the Unabomber threatened was highly, that leads us to John Stuart Mill's ethical principle of I'm sorry, I cannot say this word, utilitarianism. That's wrong, but I just cannot pronounce it. Anyway, so that leads us to Mill's ethical principle, which I believe the people making the decisions on whether to publish or not, again, considered just by default. They weren't thinking, oh, we're going to follow Mills, but it happened. So this case is about the media having a chance to save lives. Now, typically, no, there shouldn't be the power in the public to decide what makes the paper and what doesn't. But the thing that I have learned about ethics, more so in this class than anything, is that there's never just a black and white. There's always a gray answer. There is, or like a gray area. There's always an exception to a rule. There's always multiple different acceptable answers to a question, or many different ways to solve a problem. I'm not really sure ethical theories are helpful in this case when examining it from, okay, if you followed Aristotle's theory, which decision should have been made? I think it can be argued that certain theories case, but I don't think that one theory fits the entire case of the Unabomber. I would say that Aristotle's golden mean doesn't apply here because, there's no way to treat others the way that you want to be treated when your only option is to publish a paper and a bomb not go off, or to publish it and a bomb go off, killing people, because, of course, you wouldn't want to be killed. That's what you would want to do, but you're not really treating people in this case. I think the newspaper made the right decision because they had the chance to save lives, who knows how many, and they took it. Now, it might have compromised the integrity of the paper or given other people the idea to threaten public safety in order to get what they want, but in the long run, I don't think that's what people will look back and remember about the Unabomber in the press. Thank you for listening.